Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Boy, it's chilly this morning. Now that we're into fall, there are things that need to be done both in our vegetable gardens and out in the landscape. So that's the topic for today. Let's get started. One of the first things I want to do is harvest the rest of the tomatoes. We've got rain in the forecast and I'm very excited about it, but I don't want the rain to split the skins on the tomatoes because they can start rotting. So I'm going to pick anything that is about this size or larger. I've got some tomatoes that are trying to change colors and others that are green as can be. So I'm going to get those all picked and I'll move them into our basement where it's cool and dark and let them finish ripening. After the kind of summer that we had this year, I really don't want to lose any of these last tomatoes. Well, here's what I ended up with. There were more out here than I realized. And yesterday I actually picked a huge bowl full of ripe tomatoes and we made salsa. So we're doing okay considering the weather that we've had this summer. So let me show you how I store these. This is our basement, so please excuse the mess. But I did want to show you what I use to store the tomatoes until they get ripe. What you're looking at here is an orchard rack, which I bought from Gardener's Supply quite a few years ago, and it has been ideal for storing all kinds of things. It's got 6 drawers, and for the tomatoes, I'm lining the drawers with some newspaper just in case one of them goes bluey. I won't have a mess everywhere. So as I put the tomatoes in here, I'm keeping them an inch or two apart. And that way, if one of them decides to start rotting, it hopefully will not affect its neighbor. So that's the game plan. While I'm down here, I thought I'd also show you our onion harvest. We did okay this year. So we're keeping them down in the basement until the temperatures get cooler. Then our garage will be a perfect temperature for storing them out there. We did that last year for the first time and it worked great. So our garage is not heated, but it is insulated. And so it probably gets down to about 40 or so. The next thing I want to do is recheck all of the winter squash and pumpkins to see which ones are ripe so that I can cut them off the vines and move them to our little greenhouse. And that's for the 2-week curing period. Now I talked about this a couple of weeks ago in one of my videos where I explained how to know when something is ripe, but just as a quick recap, I want to press my thumbnail into the skin. If it cuts into it easily, that means that it is not ripe, and if it doesn't, that means I get to take it off the vine. But the other thing I'm noticing on this one is it looks like the vine completely died, so this is ripe even just looking at that, because that's definitely a brown stem. So here's the first potimarron that I'm harvesting. Nice little squash. We grew these last year for the first time and they are fantastic. Let's test this one. Yeah, it doesn't cut into that either and it has a brown stem. Now, what I'm trying to do is to leave about anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches of stem attached. If I were to knock this off either on purpose or accidentally, this is an area where mold can develop and you don't want that to happen. But if you happen to knock this off by accident, just make sure you use this one first. But that one gets to go into the greenhouse. What about this one? That's looking pretty good too. This is great. It's always exciting to harvest something in the fall, right? Okay, how about this one? This one I don't think is ready. Very close though. Okay, well let's take these ones into the greenhouse. Okay, I've ended up with 4 potimarrons so far. The other ones weren't quite ripe yet. And the idea here is to place them on sheets of newspaper a few inches apart. You want them in a bright area that is protected from the weather. And just let them finish hardening off. And that's basically what's going to happen over the 2 weeks, is that skin is going to become more tough and they're going to keep in storage a long time. Now I'm going to keep checking on the other winter squash. They can handle a light frost. They're okay with rain, but not a hard frost. So I really need to watch them, and I'm going to keep adding things into our little greenhouse. Now before we move to other areas of the landscape for other projects, I wanted to let you know that during the summer I was trying to take a photo of the garden every 2 weeks so that you could see the transformation over time. It didn't always happen. I really tried to remember, but I've missed a few here and there. And next year I intend to start it early in the spring so you really see the transformation. But I thought you'd enjoy seeing the next few photos. We grow both red raspberries and gold raspberries, and this time of year they look pretty wild and woolly. They need to be tied back in. But I wanted to let you know a couple of things about them. You can prune back the old canes that bore this year down to the ground in the fall. I personally think it's better to wait until late winter if you can. And one of the reasons is if your canes still have green leaves on them, they are still conducting photosynthesis, and that is putting energy into the root of the plant for next year's growth and production. So I think it's better to wait. I do know a lot of folks prune them back. The important things you need to know are that there are 2 types of canes on every raspberry plant. There are primo canes. Those are the new ones that came up during the current year's growing season. And there are flora canes, and those are canes from the previous year that this year bloomed and set fruit. I know that's confusing. I have a video on pruning raspberries. Just go to my YouTube channel, search for the word raspberries, and you will find it very easily. But I also intend to put a link to the video in the show notes for this one on my YouTube channel, so that will make it even easier for you to find it. But this is something that you can be doing in the coming months, but if they have green leaves, just take your time, because these plants are getting energy to produce your crop for next year. Do you grow roses? They are one of my favorite things to grow in our garden, and I've got all different types. But there are some that are really tall, and I'm going to prune some of them back. Now I'm not talking about a regular pruning for a rose bush, because this time of year it's a little iffy depending upon when your season is over and how soon the temperatures are really going to drop. Here in zones 5 and 6, it's typical for the experts to say don't prune them back after Labor Day. However, I know that these tall canes are going to whip around in the winter winds, and that's not good. So I am going to give them a quick prune back, just the longest stuff that I think will get caught in those winds. Other canes, I'm just going to leave them alone. I'll do all of my pruning in the spring. But I just wanted to make you aware that if you have a cane, it's not tied to anything, and it's really going to be whipping around, potentially damaging the plant, then you'd want to cut it back just a little bit to keep the plant safe. I know when fall arrives, we gardeners want to make everything nice and tidy, but I don't do that as much as I used to. You can probably see I have all these different flowers around me. Some of them are already finished, such as this bee balm. We have cone flowers that are wrapping things up, black-eyed Susans, gloriosa daisies, lavender. All of these things I like to just leave alone and prune them back in the spring. And that's because I want to be good to our bird friends. They get so much nutrition out of the seed heads during the fall and winter months. So yeah, I know it doesn't look so tidy, but I care about the birds, and that's what I'm going to do. I've been doing this for years, and it is so enjoyable to watch them getting the seeds out of these little seed heads. Another thing I know we gardeners like to tidy up in the fall is the area underneath shrubs like this hydrangea, because leaves accumulate during the summer months. Well, yeah, it would look tidy to remove it, but guess what? That leaf litter is habitat for beneficial insects that will help you out in your garden. So I strongly recommend that you leave it in place and make a nice place for these good bugs to live during the winter months. Have you been growing annual geraniums, which are technically known as pelargoniums, during the summer? Well, before you get a frost, you can overwinter them using a very simple method and then grow them again next year. It's a great money saver, and if you find something that you really love, I'm crazy about this Americana coral, you get to grow it year after year. I do have videos on it. I'll put a link to one of them in the notes beneath this video on my YouTube channel. But the basic steps are to dig them up, knock the soil off the roots, snip off any buds or flowers, and then put them into a box or a bin and keep them in a dark, cool location during the winter months. You need to check on them once a month to make sure they're doing okay. The plants will look awful, but they do come back in the spring. In February, you pot them up again, and then once the danger of frost has passed in your area, then you can plant them outside again. So I encourage you to use this method. It's a great skill to learn anyway, and you get to grow them year after year after year. Okay, that gives you some ideas of things to do in the coming months. I have an announcement for you. I am going to take a sabbatical for a month. I will be back November 1st, and I have to tell you, this has been one of the most challenging years for me, not just the horrible weather we had, but with my book coming out, I've been so busy making appearances on radio shows and podcasts. I write a column every week, I shoot a video every week, I post to social media every single day. I have all these things going on, and I thought, I need a break. So I just wanted you to know that, yep, I'm taking a few weeks off, and then I'll get back into my normal routine again. Thanks so much for watching all of my videos, everybody. I really appreciate you. I couldn't do it without you, and I hope that all of them have been helpful so far. There's more to come. Take care.